episode of Who Let Them Moms Out.
Woo, 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 woo.
Okay, this is better.
I skipped a bit there, but
It's probably the delay, on the audio because we're reporting from two totally opposite parts of the world.
see, that's the editing that he's gonna do.
There you go. So this is the podcast where real motherhood meets real conversations, and all topics are on topics, and no judgment is allowed because we're all doing the best that we can. So if you are interested in taking part in conversations that are absolutely normal, real motherhood topics without the judgment, welcome. You've come to the right place. Today we're going to be talking about handling food with our children without making a negative connection. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but both of us come from backgrounds that are totally different to how we're raising our children, whether it's geographic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, etc. And also the world is changing a lot. We're obviously learning a lot about food and our bodies and how we work that I don't think our parents knew back in the day. And so we're all trying to make better choices. But I think that the danger here comes from making better choices that are aligned with restrictions and decisions for our children that may end up being wrong in the future, because everything our parents have done with and for us was obviously thinking it was the right decision, right? Like people believed like butter gave you cancer, milk
back
gave you
then,
cancer, and then it changes.
back then was the the bee's knees. It was it was what the information they had. That was
Right.
it. And that's
Right.
what we have to accept. Unfortunately,
Exactly.
we've moved forward, we've evolved.
Exactly. So we're going to do a little bit different of an episode this time around. We're going to do a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask you the first questions I have for you, which is, what's the most frustrating thing for you around food and your toddler?
Well, it's the pickiness of it. I think, because it is really the pickiness of it. He's a very good eater. But he does love the good snack, and he loves to play these days he does this, like he pulls a face and goes, puts his hand on his belly and goes, "I'm hungry." And it's like, how can you even like say no to that? He's like, but I'm hungry. And he wants a cake, or he wants like olives and like a little snack before dinner. But I've had to, it was one of the things that I had to learn to, like, be more careful with the snacking and but it's definitely the pickiness of it. And now he goes, me no eat that. When he sees something that, when we're preparing the meal and he's something that he's like not sure about, he's like, me no eat that.
Wow. Hey, listen, it's valid, like we all feel that way about certain things. For me,
it's true though.
Yeah, like it's funny because we have all these standards because we're the one that have to deal with it. But in reality, when you really break it down, it's like, well, we're all like that. When you go to a restaurant, there are some things that are not appealing to you, even if you eat them on a regular.
I am picky as how
you
I
are
think that's
picky.
What trigger, yeah, that's why I get triggered, I think, by it, is because my parents were very triggered by my pickiness. So I'm triggered by my toddler being picky as well, which I always just tell myself, to calm down and it's fine, let it go. It's fine. It's food.
A taste of your own medicine. I love it.
Yeah, I know. A little
so
bit.
for me, the most frustrating thing about food is currently that she can't stand she cannot sit still to eat. Like she just like roams and dances and sings and I have to chase, and it's like we started baby-led weaning with the purpose of she's going to be an independent eater. And I'm so proud of myself. Alaska is a fantastic eater. She eats everything. Like, she gives me almost no trouble for food. But lately, it's like she needs to perform and break dance and pet the cat and go outside and bathe in the rain and all of that whilst the meal is happening. And so I find myself like feeding her out of my own triggers, right? So I'm feeding her because I want her to eat. Like I have a time frame that I want this meal to happen. And so I find myself not being able to let go of the expectation of how much she should eat and when she should eat and what part of the plate she should eat, right? And I think that comes from the societal expectation, right, and judgment of who's a good eater, who isn't, whether your child is being like nourished, because I think that's a fear for most parents, right? For most of us, it's like we know that if she doesn't have a meal, nobody's gonna die. But in the back of your head as a mother, I feel like it's your duty to make sure she eats a balanced meal. So when it's been like 2 meals that she's having like 2 spoonfuls of just white rice. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no nutritional value. Oh my God, what am I doing? Like, am I too lax? Like,
Yeah.
and that is so
Yeah.
triggering for me.
Yes, that is for me as well. It's like when it's his pickiness, and then at one point that he's just literally eating potatoes and chicken
Mm,
and chicken nuggets at that. So it's like,
yeah. And I feel
but
like,
but there's days though that he does eat so it's like I can't, it's not all
yeah.
just
But
that bad, but
that's what I try to remind myself. It's like you always freak out because you think, oh, like they're not eating today. But it's like, well, yesterday they had a full meal, no problem. Or like, we're gonna
yeah,
eat tonight and it's gonna
exactly,
be something I know
exactly.
she likes and she'll eat it, but then so okay, my next question to you is how did you notice how likely you are to have a negative connection about food? Um, even if you didn't realize it. So like when we talk about negative connections, we're talking about, and we'll dive a little bit deeper on this, but we were just talking about this before we started recording that like I'm Cuban. So like in my culture, sugar is just the holy grail. Like my grandfather used to give me bowls with brown and white sugar mixed together as dessert. Like this was something we ate through our childhood. And now we have all this information about how bad sugar is and sugar spikes and how
Yeah.
bad it is for you and diabetes and all these things, right? And I have a massive history of diabetes, both me and my husband, right? On our families. My husband's Mexican. So again, another Latino culture that's super big on sugar. And obviously for me that's a big fear. Like I don't want to revolve life around sugar like it was for me when I was a kid. I don't want to make sugar the treat. I want to make it part of everyday life, but I want to teach her how to eat it, right? So like after a meal is much better than as a snack on its own. But how did you notice what part of food connection was a problem for you and like how negative it was? Like how did you realize what the trigger was for you?
mm, I don't like my family, I guess. I don't know. It probably
I'll
will
give
be
you
sugar as well, really. It's like the only one that I do have a negative, and it's more like it's not really like um is it a culture? I don't know if it's like a family thing because like I do remember being like I love sweets. I used to love sweets, and I feel like it was because we were told not to eat them during the week. I
mm,
think it was at the time. It was like that thing that you would just eat at the weekends, sweets, because that was what it was, the allowed things for your teeth, la
mm,
la 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 la, and all of this. And I think that restriction sort of like made me a bit, want more sugar, and I maybe slightly, like sugar nuts.
yeah.
No, but so I have that. Always felt that restriction maybe is what sort of made me a bit intense about it. Um, so I always had that like thing that I didn't want to give him. I don't want to be restricted to sugar towards Flynn, but also where there's a fine line where you can go,
Right.
it can cross because then you can be giving too much. And I have failed at one point. I was like, oh, hold the horses. Like this is just a lot happening right now. We need to calm down. So yeah, so it's just a very fine line of where, oh, it's okay, just a little bit. And then again, and then there's another part where you see online and everyone else is doing, and everyone else does this differently, and you're just like, is it me?
Yeah.
Am I the maybe
Yeah, and then you go out with families or friends or relatives that have kids that are totally the opposite of what you're doing, and then it creates this whole like, am I doing something wrong? Like, is it too much? Is it too little? Like for me, it's also with sugar, because again, like my culture was so heavily like sugar crazed, and um, I have a massive sweet tooth. Like when I'm pregnant, like this is all I want to eat is just pastries and
right.
sweets, like massive. And I think so for my daughter, we never did sugar until she was like almost 2. Like we didn't do sugar for her first birthday cake, nothing like that. And I never felt guilty about not giving her sugar, even when I was having it myself. But now that she's a little bit older and she can make her own decisions, like one thing that we've always tried to do is make her aware and capable of making decisions, right? So I grew up again in a culture where kids do what adults say, and almost like the kid has no autonomy until you're an adult. Like you don't exist, you're just following through what
Yeah.
the adults do and say. And I found myself having to reinvent myself almost when I became an adult, because I feel like a lot of the things that I was ingrained and told that I had to do and follow because of this family, that's what they taught me, were not really aligned with who I was. And so I think in an attempt to make it a little bit easier for my daughter, I've always been really adamant on like she makes her own decisions, right? Even if I don't agree with them. Obviously, you help her make decisions. Like I'm not gonna let her cross the street when there's a truck coming, just because she made a decision, obviously, but there are things like the way she dresses. I just let her wear whatever she wants because at some point, very soon, society starts telling you what's in, what's out, what you should wear if you're a girl. And this is the only time where you can do this. And so with food, especially with sweets, I started noticing how my husband and I, we were both raised in the United States. My husband is American, like born and raised, but a family from his Hispanic family. And I'm an immigrant. I migrated to the United States when I was 12. And even though I've spent the majority of my life outside of Cuba traveling, you know, the US culture is a big part of my upbringing as well. And I noticed that whenever we eat something that is carb loaded or that is a little fatty or that has no nutritional value or that is sweet, it's almost like we punish ourselves while we eat it, like, or before we eat it. So like if we're sitting there and this awesome plate of pasta with like bacon and sauce, and bread, like before we eat it, my husband will say, "Oh my God, this is a problem. This is horrible. This is so bad for me, all fatty," but he still eats it. And to me, that's so crazy that we do that because we are both very health conscious. We've spent the majority of our adult life, especially since we've been together, like making healthy choices. We've been vegan, vegetarian. We've studied the whole thing. We're always looking at nutrition. I love learning about the effect that food has on the body. And I always do it from a place of like, I want to learn what makes me feel better. I want to be healthy. But yet I find myself punishing myself for food before I have it, which then creates a negative thing because I believe in metaphysics. So I believe like if you're gonna eat something, even if it's bad for you, you gotta eat it with like the right mindset. Because if you're eating the best
Yeah.
food on earth, but you're telling yourself it's bad, you're basically creating stress in your body, and that makes the food already just not land in the right way. And so I want to do that for my daughter, but like, how do you do that when you have like a 3-year-old that wants to eat? Like today, she started crying because she wanted to have chocolate in the morning. So moving on to the next question is like, what is the fear you have with your kids and food, and how are you battling that fear? So my fear is that she will be the opposite, right? So like if my fear is that if we are crazy about no sugar, for example, or that we make it a point to tell her that these sugary things are bad for you, then she'll be obsessed with them because because we made it a thing that she shouldn't have. And so instead, right? Yeah. And so instead, what I do is I try to teach her what I know is better for consuming these foods, right? So, like, for example, when she wakes up in the morning and she wants a piece of chocolate, it's like, well, we don't eat chocolate in the morning. If you want to, I can give you a glass of
Yeah.
milk, I can make you some eggs. And then after your morning snack, after you have some protein, you can have your chocolate, right? So I never say
Yeah. Yeah.
no, chocolate is bad or sweets are bad. It's more like
Yeah.
it's
Exactly. Yeah.
better
Exactly.
to,
Yeah.
and then I explained to her that if we eat too many sweets, it affects our teeth. She can already she's 3, she understands this. And also why it's important to brush our teeth. So by the way, super mom win, 3.5 years old, brushes her teeth twice a day, every day, is on it. She's on it because this whole sweet thing. I blame this on Ryder more than me, to be honest.
He is
But
very obsessed with that.
he loves, but he's very like, my husband has the most dental hygiene of anybody I've ever met, and so our daughter has taken like this. I say mom win, but really it wasn't me. Um, and another thing I've done, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. It's just what I've done. But if her stomach hurts, because again, if you have a regular diet and you're sitting there, you eat a whole bag of gummy bears, your stomach will hurt from all the sugar. So when this happens, I let her know that sometimes when we eat too much of anything, our bodies will react and your tummy hurts. That's why it's important to eat the sweets after the meal. And she gets it. I mean, she still asks for it, but she doesn't get upset. She doesn't throw a tantrum yet.
Yeah.
That's how I'm
Yeah. But
battling that. But I don't know if it's right or wrong.
well, yeah. I mean, you will have to wait until she's 20 and then tell you about the trauma or not.
Yeah. I just started going to a psychologist because I scared her
Yeah,
about eating
exactly. But
sweets.
no, I don't think so. I find it quite like I don't know, I find it quite human that way because you are actually getting her down to her feet and explaining to her the reason why. Like it's not like you can't have it. You just because why? Because I said so.
Hmm.
Like you know,
Right.
you're explaining the reasoning. Like you, and also again, like you're having a tummy ache. Like you having a tummy ache is not. It doesn't come from poof. Like it is because you've had the chocolate. So I think that's like honestly, it's the best way to do it. Really, because I was obsessed with chocolate. I'll tell you, and I found my mum would have to hide chocolate, and I was very good at hiding it. I found it every time. And she would then, like, months later, would find just wrappers.
How funny. I went through a
So,
phase
yeah.
of eating ice
But it
cream.
doesn't
All I
mean that
ate
it
was
will
ice
happen to
cream.
everyone, though.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. So,
I
I don't
met
want the people to
I
feel like,
so I met a child, and I met a child in high school, a friend of mine in high school, who his mom raised him like on a Caribbean island, and they only ate like raw fish and raw fruits for like years. Like he never ate candy. And then when he moved to Miami when he was a teenager, it was like he just could not, and he was always like eating all this candy at school because he was just like obsessed with it. And I wonder if that's worse for you than if you have it like balanced throughout your life, you know? I mean,
that's
definitely
also like one
mentally,
of
I
my
think,
fears. That is
yeah.
definitely one of my fears. Is one of my fears was because I also wanted Flynn to be vegan at the start. I wanted him to just eat vegetables because I felt that that way he would make him eat more vegetables and would make him more like a better relationship with food. It was not the case. Not even that he prefers meat. He doesn't prefer meat, but it doesn't mean that he eats better vegetables than he eats anything else,
Mm.
right? Like it doesn't. It didn't repair what I thought was going to repair, and um, wait, where was I going with this?
The
Completely lost.
eating meat, being vegan, thinking he was gonna eat more vegetables, like pressuring basically around eating,
Yeah,
you
the
know.
pressuring. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. And then I came to the realization as well that like in the future, if he wanted to eat meat, because at the time I was also vegetarian, and I no, not vegetarian, I was like a flexitarian, but mostly vegetarian. And I remember I just had some meat, and I felt really ill. And then I was thinking to myself, like, I don't want my son to, to
Mm,
have to feel bad when he wants to try meat. Like I am limiting his choices,
mm-hmm,
right? Like I
mm-hmm,
don't want him
mm-hmm.
to like eventually one day be like, oh, I want to try meat, and then he can't because he's actually like his body can't actually process it, and it will just actually make him feel ill rather than be the experience that is meant to be, which is food. And he needs to have that choice. Like I shouldn't
Yeah.
be the one to force him into that choice. Yeah, that's what I was going to. Sorry.
I no, it's fine. I think it's all about that balance, right? Like, I mean, it's the all-encompassing goal of parenthood, right? Like, how do you find that
Yeah,
balance? And I think also being honest about it, like, we're not perfect with food. We don't make the right choices all the time. And I think being vulnerable and honest about it and making it okay for our children to make, like when she eats a lot of sweets, out of her own choice, and then her stomach hurts, I let her know, like, hey, it's okay. Like, this
mm-hmm.
happened because you ate a lot. Next time, try to eat a little less or try to spread it out. Like, it's not even about bringing shame or letting her know, this is so bad or whatever,
No, it's just
because I
like
have
we can
found,
fix it. Like we can
right,
fix any futures. Like there's no need to like make it like, oh yeah, you did this. So like
right,
yeah,
right.
there's no
There's no need to
point.
make the mistake so grave that you're just afraid of it for life, right? It's better to create a balance. Like, it's the same thing with screens. I find it that and maybe it's a personality thing. Again, a lot of what we're sharing is based on our own experience. We both only have
Yeah,
one child. I think a lot of the advice that's being thrown out there comes from parents that have it one way and assume this is the way that it is because I have it this way.
yeah,
And they disregard the fact that personalities come into play a lot. So, like, if your child is a certain way, they may not react the same way that another person might because they're different, right? So, like with tablets and screens and stuff like that, I've experienced this with Alaska. We've never had a no screen or no tablet or no, like when she was little, obviously we didn't give her a screen because there was no need for that. She was entertained with life. But when we traveled, we always gave her like the games on the phones or like the educational games or whatever, like age appropriate things, obviously. And we were never crazy about the no screens or no technology because it's gonna be a part of her life. What's the point of like,
yeah.
completely taking it away? And I find that now she's 3.5 and she likes to watch TV, but if there's anything happening, TV is like gone. She doesn't care about it. Or the same thing with the tablet. She asks for it, but if it's not available, she doesn't, it's not a big deal. It's not, but I find it that when you make it like such a thing, like you can only watch TV on the weekends, or we only do this, only candy on the weekends, then it becomes this thing that they want, like the reward. And so you make the bad thing into the good thing that they're looking forward to
Yeah.
because they can only have it so many times, And so with Halloween candy, actually this year is the first year that she had Halloween candy. And I mean, obviously we were eating most of it at night when she was already going to bed. But during the
Classic.
day, I would just tell her you get 4 candies and you can do 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. That way your tummy doesn't hurt. So after your breakfast, you can have 1 or 2 pieces of candy, and then you can have lunch, and then you can have 2 more pieces of candy. And that's it, because otherwise, your stomach hurts, you don't want to eat them all, blah, 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 blah. And she was surprisingly okay with this. I was baffled. Like, never did we have a fight about candy. Never did we have an
Yeah.
argument. No tantrums. And again, I'm not saying this is that I have a solution for all parents. This is probably just how her personality is, Um, but I just think in general with food, it's so important to notice our own patterns, right? With our own fears with food, so we don't pass that along to our kids, and to be really
Yeah.
careful on how we portray foods, because I've also been in the position of like, I'm vegan, this is the best thing, the best way to eat, and then
Yeah.
2 years later I find out that's actually the worst diet you can have, and oh my God, you should be eating bone broth and all these things. And now I'm like, I'm
It just
basically like,
changes. I find your life also changes. It's like wherever you are in life, it will be different, and you'll be in a different part of your life, and things that will matter to you will be different than 10 years ago. That's
and
a
your
hundred
and your
percent
needs your
sure.
needs are different as
Exactly. Yeah.
well. Like,
Your body will need
yeah,
different things. Everything
yeah.
will be different. But that actually reminded me of one of the fears that we like that one of the things that I'm battling right now as well with food is the finishing everything, because that's a big thing
Oh,
in
yes.
my culture, because food was not a thing. It was like they would have to, they starved most of the days in my family, so not finishing a meal is very
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful in my family, and also small plates are very disrespectful too. And that was a big thing because I eat considerably so much less than my family, like so much less compared to them. And I was never like, I every dinner was a fight for me to finish my meal because I was full, and
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't understand it, because for them he was like, what? No, we ate the same amount and you can't be full because you have to have the same amount. And but again, it was that thing of, starvation that they passed. And it's something that with Flynn as well. Like, we try to be like, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, come on, you have to finish. And then we think about like, no, you don't have to finish. You have to eat. You have to eat until you're full, like changing the wording of what we're saying to be like, you don't have
Yeah.
to finish
That's
because you
that's
don't
a
have to like.
struggle. That's a struggle for me too. And I think it comes from, again, this cultural belief that children don't have the ability to make decisions for themselves. I was
Yeah,
force
yeah.
fed my entire childhood. Things that I didn't want to eat, at times that I didn't want to eat. And for me, it's a big trigger and also a big lesson that I'm still working on. A lot of our meals end up in fights because I'm like, you need to eat. Why are you prancing and dancing? And just eat, 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 and finish your plate, And lately, as of the past 2 weeks, I've actually like made a vow to myself, like, no more, no more.
Yeah.
If she's done eating after 2 bites, she's done eating after 2 bites. And later on, she's gonna ask me for a snack, and that's when I can repair. That's when I can say no snacking because we have your meal. I can bring down your plate again, and you can finish your meal or whatever it is, right? Um, but I think it's really important to learn or to unlearn, right? These generational pass
Yeah.
downs, weird techniques that like a child needs to be force fed, or because at the end of the day, all it does is create this negative connotation around food that ends up hurting them more than helping them. Like, nobody ever learned to love food or to finish a plate because they were force fed. Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody in the history of the
Yeah.
world ever learned how to eat because they were
And,
force fed.
and one thing that also we need to accept that, like, even though like things worked out, back in the day, doesn't mean that they still work now, and doesn't mean that didn't
Exactly.
create trauma, and it doesn't mean that it was not bad in the end. Like, you got that child fed, but doesn't mean that it didn't create a bad relationship with food. So we can't, like, people that have had children back in the day like keep saying, oh yeah, but I did it anyway, and you
Mm.
survived and things like that. But that's not how that's not the goal. That's
Yeah, you
not the goal. Is not to
survived, but
create
at what
another
cost?
traumatic child. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Like, so I feel like we fail to accept our own failures.
If you're watching the video, this thing is doing a thing where I guess she went like thumbs up and it just created a little emoji of thumbs up. I agree with this so much. I actually, just to wrap this up, like I've noticed the whole food thing, and I noticed a couple of weeks ago is when it actually clicked that I was like, dude, we're serving her this massive plate of food. She is this big, like she cannot possibly eat all this food. We're just like feeding her all this food, like she doesn't need this much food. And what I've started doing, probably my mom would think I'm insane, but I take her with me to serve her plate. So I ask her how much she wants. Yes, how much do you want?
And it was like,
yeah. And then slowly educate her on, you put on your plate only what you're going to eat. You can always come back for more, but we don't throw food away. Like for me, it's a massive trigger, by the way, from my childhood. I was a hungry child. I was given water with sugar to tame my hunger many days in my child. I know what it's like to be hungry as a kid. So for me, throwing food away is like a massive like
trigger.
No, like it's a massive trigger. But I also have to understand that she's just beginning her life. She's just beginning to understand food. She's just beginning her relationship with food. And by imposing my own traumas, my own beliefs, my own upbringing and ways that I was taught around food, it has the ability to create some negative connotations for her that I don't want. So I feel like for us parents, the most important thing to remember is that everything we do can and will affect our children. And sometimes trying to avoid a problem can create another problem. And I think letting go, which is the hardest thing to do sometimes, is often the best because you're putting it on them. And I'm not saying neglecting, don't feed your kid until they ask you to be hungry and leave them hungry for 3 weeks and they're malnourished. Like, I know somebody's going to blow this out of proportion.
It's just don't force it then. Don't force it.
Yeah. Just let them have some autonomy over their bodies. And one thing, by the way, last thing that I'm trying to get rid of is I'm trying to get rid of the idea that we have to have 3 meals a day. That is something new I'm trying.
And the timings.
I don't
timings.
Yes. I don't eat normally 3 meals a day. I don't want to eat 3 meals a day. I don't want to sit down to eat 3 meals a day. My body doesn't ask me for that. So why does she have to sit down for breakfast? And then it's like this whole stress that they have to wake up and they have to have a plate of food. Why? When I wake up, I don't want to have a plate of food. That's not. But
the reason for that is because then they have to go to school and they have to do things, that's the system. It's like you're teaching. Exactly. Yeah, it's a society thing because then it's you're learning because eventually you'll be an adult that needs to eat and then goes to work and to routine. You're just learning your routine. And one of the things I've started to do as well, like with the dinner, because we were coming from school at 5 and he would be hungry and I would give him a snack because it's 5 o'clock, but then he would get to dinner time at 7 and he would not be hungry because So I started giving him dinner at 5. Like he gets home, he says he's hungry, I give him dinner. You have him ready.
And then before bed, he can just have a fruit or a snack.
He gets to have a little snack. Yeah, he has a little snack and then he's fine. It's perfect.
Yeah. Anyway,
we're all just battling this through and trying to make the best out of this solution.
We don't have solutions or advice. We're doing the best we can, and we really don't know if what we're doing is right or wrong. We will start having
share our experience and hope for the best.
Yes. We're gonna have some experts join us very soon in the following podcast, hopefully covering all these topics and guiding us a little bit more, along all these troubles of parenting. But we just want to say that if you are in the trenches like we are with all topics, food, anything motherhood related, just know that the fact that you're trying your best, the fact that you're looking for alternatives, the fact that you're out there looking and seeking different options already puts you ahead of the curve. You're already doing the best you can. And at the end of the day, we don't all have to be perfect at everything we do, right? We just have to lead with empathy and love and just sort of work it out. We're all just doing the best we can. And what works for one family may not work for the other. And this is okay.
Yes, exactly. Being present and trying is all you can do. Like at the end of the day is all you can do. And it's the best thing you will ever do is be present and try. And every single day you'll try and be better.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Who Let the Moms Out. Don't forget you can find us online on Instagram at Who Let the Moms Out .pod. Come and share with us your stories, your fails, your wins, what you're doing that makes life easier, and the things that you're trying that you thought were going to make life easier but just have made it worse. We'll do an episode.
We want to hear it all.
We want to hear it all, you know, because every time we hear a fail, we're like, damn it, okay, fine. It's just, thankfully, it's not just me.
Yes, speak.
And every time we hear
Make
a
us
win,
normalize.
we're like, yes. And then when we hear a win, we can say, oh, okay, there is hope.
Yes, exactly. But there is hope for us. If you have a teenager, send some hope.
Let us know let us know there's light at the end of this tunnel. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.